welcome back to our creative videos. My name is Loretta Hayes, and I am from Hayes Sewing Machine Company in Wilmington, Delaware. And today we have a special video because we are going to show you how to do our shop hop block for the Mid-Atlantic shop hop. So let's start out with how things have changed. Last year, when people did the, it's upside down.
Yes.
Okay. When people were doing the shop hop, which are going to be the month of July and August, each shop would give you a pre-printed block. Super cute, but they have changed it out, and we're super excited about how they've changed it out. So what they've done this year is they have done block patterns. So we actually got a chance to select our pattern. We actually have block 28. And yeah, woohoo. So we know there's at least 28, there's 26, 7 more, right? So each shop is going to give you a card that has the picture of the block and the layout on the front, and then the cutting directions on the back of the card. We actually got a chance to select our card, and so when we selected the card, we selected a simple one that had really nice design capabilities for it. So when you're doing the block 28, there are only 2 units in the block 28. So you will have a 4-patch unit, and you will have a star unit, which I put in the bag.
You're just letting the anticipation.
Yeah, is that really? Well, this is a different color one, but nonetheless, there you go. All right, so those are the 2 units that you need to make the Hayes Sewing Machine Company shop hop block.
Is that more of a, it's kind of hard to see on the white.
Oh, okay, here, let's put it on the blue.
There you go.
So you can see it there, and you can see it like that. Okay? All right, so let's talk about what we need to do for creating the block. So we'll start out with the star tip block. And so what we need is we need 4 background blocks. Okay, so here's our 4 background blocks. And by the by, on the back of the pattern, there are all kinds of cutout instructions. Literally, you are only going to be using the cutout instructions on the top of the card on there. So we are doing the A cut and the B cut on there.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet, yep. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to have our backgrounds, and then we are going to take blocks and we are going to sew from one corner to the other corner. All right, so let's have you, Pam, we'll have you swing around, and we will do some star tip blocks. So we're going to go ahead and sew. I'm using a 1/4 inch foot, just a regular straight stitch, and we're simply going to sew from one corner to the other. These blocks are not large, so super easy to just kind of eyeball it going across. If you are uncomfortable with that, you can literally draw a line from corner to corner and follow the line. And I would chain them together so that it goes quickly. So we're tucking it into the upper right-hand corner, and I'm sewing from corner to corner. And the thing to check for when you are doing these star tips is we're going corner to corner on the blue block, but when you're sewing, you should always be sewing from the sides of the white block. So we shouldn't ever be sewing from the corner here and going that way. That won't get us a star tip. So we'll go ahead and we'll finish out. So we have our 4 blocks with one of them on. So we'll come in, we'll separate, our blocks, just clip them apart, and then we are going to cut off the excess. And there is no need to get the rotary cutter out and do a 1/4 inch seam. Close is good enough in this situation, so we're just trimming it to approximately 1/4 inch. I usually just do it with the scissors. It just makes it super fast. And then we are going to take and press that up towards the corner.
Can you raise it up a little bit? So we can see
Yeah,
it?
that like that.
There you go.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and press that up so that it's to the corner, and that will be one of our star tips. So hang on for a second, we'll do a quick press. All right, so now what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna do the same thing, but on the left-hand corner. So we're gonna line up. We're gonna take it. You'll see why you want to press the first one up, because this block actually overlaps on top of it. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna flip the block around, and we're just gonna go ahead and sew 4 of those. And one of the things that is super nice about the Shop Hop block patterns is they're all the same size. So while
that's
our
nice.
quilts are just using our blocks, the ones I'm going to show you in a bit here, you could do 2 different blocks, because they're all going to be like a 9.5 inch block and like 9 inches when it's finished. So super nice. You could combine them to create different patterns.
They can almost do a sampler quilt too.
Yeah, that would be super cute. All the blocks that you did in your Shop Hop. How cute is that? All right, so we've trimmed them. We're now going to press them. And so we now have our 4 blocks that are going to be creating the star type shape.
Oh, that's
coming
pretty.
along in there. So super easy to do, nothing difficult at all. Now, the next item that we want to do is going to be our 4 patch.
Okay.
Now, our 4 patch, you can approach this a couple of ways. We can approach that. I lost a square, Pam.
I guess it's better than
Oh,
losing.
here it is.
Better than losing your
Okay.
marbles.
Yes. So you could, and the directions on the pattern have you cut squares and then sew the squares together to create your 4 patch. And so that would be a traditional 4 patch. We would simply go ahead and sew those 2 together there, those 2 together there, press towards the dark, and then join that together. However, there are 4 patches for each one of our squares.
Point it again.
So 4 corners and the center.
Got it.
So we have 4 patches to make each block. And so that's way too laborious to cut all those squares. And so instead, what we're going to do is we're going to take and do the fast piece method. So we're going to take it and we're going to cut the same dimension. So this dimension is 2 inches. So we're going to cut a 2-inch strip with the fabric, 2-inch strip with the fabric. one background, one of our fabrics,
Nice.
our fashion fabrics there. All right, so I'm going to and I sewed this together, 1/4 inch, pressed it towards the edge. And we'll just cut this one in half, but you'll just lay 2 strips on top. And so we can then go, I like to lay my strips so that we have opposites, so that we have a print and then a print, as opposed to having 2 prints together.
Got it.
On there, because then we have it set up for how we're going to sew it on there. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to line those up, and we're going to clean up our edge. And we're going to cut 2-inch sections. And
So
then,
basically the width that you cut the strips.
correct.
Got it.
So cut 2-inch sections, and we'll continue down. And so you could literally cut 5 of those, and you would have enough to do your blocks.
Well, aren't you clever rather than doing the separate?
Super simple. And if you're doing a bunch of these blocks, a kind of a nice fact to know is if you have the width of the fabric, so we have 2 strip sets, 40 inches long basically, you will get 2 blocks out of a strip set. So if you're doing 10 blocks, you want to do 5 strip sets, and then you'll be able to cross it over.
Nice.
All right, so once we have our units like this, we're going to take it. I always like to make sure that my corner is going to line up on the side here. So we're going to go ahead. I've pressed it towards opposites, and we'll wiggle that, give it a quick pinch, open it up, check it out. I do not do a quilt tack here because it's not very far to sew across it. And we will just 1/4 inch seam it. And just little tricks of the trade, if you're doing a lot of them, make sure that your background is on the top so that when you're sewing, you're not having to worry about the flip. If we flipped it and did it this way, the foot would tend to
Yeah, I've
open
done that in the
up.
past. Yeah.
So if you make sure that your background is up at the top, it's super fast. So we'll come in and we can just sew one after the other. And then that way, we can make a bunch of 4 patches all at one time without having to do the fiddly of the single block. If you're only going to do, like if you were going to do, like what you said, Pam, of the sampler block, so you're just a sampler quilt, if you're going to do just one of it, yeah, maybe I'd cut the squares on there. But if I'm going to do any more than that, I'm going to go ahead and do the strips because it will be way more fun, and quilting is supposed to be fun.
Fun, absolutely.
All right, so we're going to press this. There isn't really a direction. You know, we usually press towards the dark, but it'll be towards the dark on this one and towards the light on that. So just pick a side and press it. All right. Now, when we go to lay this out, on the block pattern, it has the center one where the print is on the upper right-hand corner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I don't know that it would make a huge difference, but if you're doing multiple blocks, it probably makes sense to do the same for each one. And then all of your other blocks are going to come in and they're going to point in towards the star.
Cool.
Okay? At this point, all we have is a really big 9 patch. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do them in rows. go like this. And if you're sewing across the star bit, you'll see that there's a little X where your threads have come across.
Show them again.
Sure, so coming along like that. So I want to go ahead and sew right in the center of that X.
Got it.
And that way I'm not cutting off my star tips.
That would be bad.
Yes, that would be sad, wouldn't it? All right, so we'll come across here. All right, so we've got 3 of those bits done. We're gonna clip them apart and we're gonna lay them back out again. Okay? Oftentimes I get cocky and I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and do, and that's always where I have to go ahead and seam ripper. So lay back out so you can see the star, and then let's go ahead and add the rest of them. So we'll flip that over so I can see the star tip. And sew right through that X. And then our last one. Clip them apart, and then when I pressed towards the 4-patch block on each one of them. So we pressed outwards towards the 4-patch here, outwards towards the 4-patch there, same on the other side, and in the center, pressed inward towards the 4-patch block. So let's press those. All right, so we'll lay that back out again. So we have our star. All right, so the last thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and we need to sew this seam all the way down. The points are where I want to line up, and I like to make sure that my points are dead on. And so at this point, I will do a little quilt tack. So we'll go ahead, we'll put them like we're gonna sew them normally, going along like that, lining up the corner. And I'm gonna do about 4 little stitches across the corner, just to really sew the corner in. If you've not done a quilt tack before, this saves you tons of seam rippering, because if I'm off on my corner and I find out about that,
so basically you sew 2 stitches before, then the seam, and then kind of 2 stitches after.
Correct. And so we're essentially like basting the points, so we're making sure that the points are going to be good there.
Got it.
Now, when I do that, I can take a look at it, and if I have anything, so like in the pressing, my 4-patch block is a little bit longer than my star tip block. So I know that I'm going to put that on the bottom side, because if you sew with the big on the bottom, the feed dog will ease that in.
Got it.
All right. Now, when you're doing quilt tacks, you're simply going to sew right through the quilt tack. So we'll line up the edge. We'll sew right through because we were happy with the quilt tack. We'll come in, we'll stitch across, catch our quilt tack again. And this is where my 4-patch was a little bit larger. So I'm just going to go ahead and line up the 2. This is one of those cases where somebody's going to be in charge, and it's going to be us, not our quilt. And the feed dogs create their little magic, and now those blocks are perfectly
cool.
set up. All right, so let's go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So we'll flip that. We'll get this lined up. So a few stitches across. You know, 4 is great, 12 is too much. And really the reason why I do this, let's say we get one that's not right. Let's actually make one that's not right, Pam. Okay. So we open that up, and the top one looks beautiful because we want that line going like we sewed it. And this one here kind of goes down, and it goes over and goes back.
Hold on just 1 second. Let me get pop it down again.
Okay.
Let's see if I can get it lined up. Come on, refocus. Hold on. Yeah, there we go. They see it now.
Okay. So it comes here, and it does a little boop, and then it comes over. Now, this is not horrible. I mean, it's not, you know, horrific. I'm the only one that's ever going to really notice it. But if we want to make that more accurate, all I need to do is come underneath. I'll grab a hold of the thread, and boom, I can pull that tack out. No seam ripper needed.
Hence 4 or 5 stitches as opposed to 12.
Correct. Correct. If I'm doing 12, I'm going to need the seam ripper. And so we'll just go ahead and we'll pop that back in. And I have a personal 3-strike rule. I'll put it in 3 times. If it's not right, there we go, perfect. Then I will just live with it, because we aim for accuracy, but perfectionism steals joy.
That's true.
So we want to have fun. All right, so off we go down our last seam. We'll stitch right through our quilt tack. We'll stitch through our X. Okey-doke. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press towards the center. In this case, the star tips kind of want to go that way.
That's lovely.
We have our block number 28, which is the Hay Sewing Mid-Atlantic Shop Hop block for us. All right, so that is how you make the block. If you are going to do a sampler one, you're just going to make the one and you're going to be done with it and you'll move on to the next block. But if you want to make a quilt using this block, we've done a couple of different quilts so that you can get some possibilities. And so I have named them because I had to keep them separate in my mind. And so the first quilt, which is the same exact block that I just made, going like that. Gotta have it face in the right direction, right?
Yep.
All right. So this quilt is the quilt that I have named Highlight and Accent Fabric. So all of us have in our stash, we've got these cute novelty prints, so much fun. And this is a perfect way of showcasing those prints. So we have a 9.5, when we piece that, the block will measure 9.5 inches. And then you can take your accent and you can cut a 9.5 inch block, and that becomes your alternate for your checkerboard. And so on that quilt, I have 13 pieced blocks. 13 piece blocks.
Mm-hmm.
She keeps telling me to put my hand down.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. All right. And then we have 12 of the 9.5 inch accent blocks.
Got it.
And of course, you can do as many, you can make the quilt whatever size you'd like. And then on the borders on this one, once we had sewn the blocks together, I did a white border going around so that the squares would be delineated on the side. They wouldn't bleed into the border. So this border is cut 1.5 inches. And then when you do the blue borders, that is a 2-inch border. And the final border, which is kind of the cocktail drinks here.
I like that idea.
That is, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
That is a 4-inch border. So this quilt, as it is, comes up to about 58 by 58 inches.
Okay. That's a nice size.
I did it square, but a really, really fun quilt for showing off those accent ones. All right, so that's our first option. Option number 1, okay? And then we'll take this down and we'll have Pam kind of go over to this one. This one is a show off your quilting quilt. So on this quilt, I did 17 blocks that are pieced.
Okay.
And then the 9.5-inch block that is in between those is the background fabric. So I cut the 9.5-inch block the same as the background for the 4-patch and the star tips going along here. This block, this quilt has 17 blocks that are pieced, okay, and 18 blocks that are the background coming along in here. The borders were cut 2 1/4 for the white going around, so once again, so that the block didn't bleed into the quilt. A 1 3/4 inch border to tie into the star tips, and then another 4-inch border for the orange going along in the top there. And this one was super fun to do. I did walking footwork going on the diagonals, and then I used the embroidery machine to do the designs in the center. And on the triangles on the side, if you make sure that you have enough batting and backing that you can hoop it. So when I embroidered this, maybe we can do it on this side here, Pam. So when I embroidered, I had the backing and the batting hooked up into my hoop, and then when I was finished, I just cut the edge, and so the extra bit of embroidery got cut off with the excess batting and backing on there. But such a fun quilt to show your embroidery machine on there. And you could do, like, this embroidery machine does really big designs, but you could do a smaller design. It just gives you more of a kind of a bordering effect on the outside of the quilting design.
Nice.
Fabulous. So that is option number 2. Option number 3 is let's use our scraps.
We don't have any of those.
No, we don't have any of those. And so same block, okay, but all pieced. Let me just flick it up here, Pam. So in the case of this quilt,
oh, that's stunning.
I did all of the blocks. So no 9.5-inch background block in between. So each of your block creates an interlocking pattern, which I love because it takes, you can see it creates like a 4-patch in the corner.
And a kind of interesting shape there.
Interesting shape in the center bit there as well. So if you're going to do scrappy, once again, you could do individual squares, but that's a lot of individual squares to cut. And we really would like you to have fun with this block. So just another thought, just like we did the 4-patch for the flamingo quilt, you can do the same thing for the scrappy. So you can sew your strips going along, and it could be the width of the fabric going along like that, and do a different colored one. And so then you get a scrappy 4-patch on here. So on this particular quilt, I changed the star tips. So you'll see the 4 patches are all just scrappy, and then one set of blocks has navy star tips, and one set of blocks has the lime ones. So there are 13 of the navy tipped blocks on this quilt, and there are 12 of the lime. And this quilt is about 55 by 55 on there. Once we had all of those blocks sewn together, once again, did a border coming around the outside. And so that's just a 2-inch strip going around there, cut. And then the pieced border, all I did was I took the leftover 4 patches. So you can see there's like 2 4 patches together. I took some of the leftover strip sets,
Nice.
the strips that I had cut, and sewed those together. And then I just took the leftover fabric from our star tips and just added, just to create a funky border. There's no rules to it. What's fun about it is these are, the strip sets are going to be, you know, your 2-inch strip and then your 4 patch, so everything fits together really well.
That's nice.
And I just laid it out on the floor and
I will vouch for that. She laid it out on the floor.
All right. So, lots of fun possibilities for the Shop Hop block. We are going to put a QR code for this video on the back of our blocks, so you will be able to scan it and get this video to teach you how what the possibilities of the blocks are. So we're so happy that you joined us for the quilt Shop Hop, and hopefully we'll see you next time in our creative videos. Bye.